Did you know that there's a marker for overall health and long-term health that no one is talking about? Heart rate variability, HRV, is being talked about more and more in health circles, and it's because it's a measure of stress, which is a root cause to almost every single disease.
If you have like 4 females, a mom, and 3 daughters in a house, what ends up happening is their cycle syncs all to the same cycle, but it's not to the moms. It's to who has the biggest heart, right? They've done a study on it. And in fact, in this study, it was the smallest girl because she had the most joy. All the cycles synced to her because she had the biggest metronome.
And that is what we learned from today's guest, Salim Najjar, who is an expert in biohacking, but more importantly now, bioharmonizing of the nervous system. In this episode, you'll learn about how repressed emotions are one of the #1 causes for a disruption and lowering of your heart rate variability. All right, Salim, my man, welcome to the show. I get so happy when I get to have real friends, close friends, people I hang out with to come as guests on the show. And for so long, we've been back and forth about health and wellness. And I don't know, you've had such a passion behind optimizing people's health and wellness. You know all the devices that really work and which ones don't work. But recently, you've been going more into this concept of bioharmonizing and you guys listening, I want you to pay attention to this. Bioharmonizing is really the forefront of where that whole biohacking movement is moving to. Ironically, it's the nervous system regulation. And I'm telling you, before Salim, we go into this, viewers and listeners, this conversation is going to be very important. You have to pay attention to this conversation. And I really mean it because when we think about physical diseases, mental health issues, we're thinking about nervous system. What we're going to get now is the real codes on how to optimize our nervous system. So Salim, welcome to the show.
Oh my God. Gee, thank you so much for that. And it is truly an honor. I have been a big fan of you even before we became friends. And as you know, my mom is like your #1 fan, and then moved out here and meeting you and just seeing how real of a human you are and how much you embody the things you talk about, like just made me fall in love with you that much more. And you've been a massive inspiration for me in my journey in this new chapter in my life, and really a focus on nervous system regulation, which you are so right. That's what bioharmonizing, which is this term that I've kind of realized this next evolution and transition in what the world needs in terms of consciousness is going from the biohacking to the bioharmonizing, which is really harmonizing yourself with your environment, which you do so by regulating your nervous system. And in my mind, which is an engineering analytical mind, and we'll get into that story, when I came across this biomarker HRV, which stands for heart rate variability, and heart rate variability is different than heart rate, right? It's measuring the variance or the gap between each of your heartbeats, which is measured in milliseconds. And why that's important and what that's telling you is how your heart is managing its perceived changing environment. So essentially, your relationship to your perceived stress is a direct reflection of the health of your autonomic nervous system and its agility to go from a sympathetic to a parasympathetic state. So how regulated is your nervous system is a direct reflection of your HRV score. And the higher HRV score you have, meaning the higher gap between each of the heartbeats, the more regulated your nervous system is, the more adapt and malleable it is to handle the perceived changing environment and perceived stressors that are happening in every moment around you.
Okay, so we have a marker that is really showing us how resilient our nervous system is to the environment, which is causing us stress. Like anytime I hear the word stress, I think about, are you chemically stressed or are you physically stressed over working out or something like that? But most people were talking about they're emotionally stressed. But in that emotional stress state that we carry consistently, what does that do to HRV? Like, what do you mean variance? How does HRV change based on how much stress you're holding in?
Totally. So I think to answer that question first, and I know you've talked about this so much because this is your world, nervous system regulation, somatic work, just going to give a high level of what the autonomic nervous system is, right? And why I believe, and I know you believe, it's the most important system that governs 90% of our voluntary and involuntary functions, all of our visceral organs, our digestion, our heart, our breath, right? All that is controlled consciously and unconsciously by this nervous system, which operates in 2 states primarily, right? Sympathetic, which is synonymous with the fight or flight state, and parasympathetic, which is synonymous with the rest and digest state, right? And each of those states have different frequencies, brain frequencies associated with them that correlate with different things. So in the parasympathetic rest and digest state, you have delta, brainwaves, which is between 0.5 and 4 hertz. And that's when you're sleeping. That's your deepest parasympathetic state. That's when your body's resetting. We'll talk about the importance of sleep, ways you could support sleep, cheap ones, expensive ones, all the things, but crucial sleep for all of us. It's actually the only thing evolution hasn't gotten rid of in any species, right? Is sleep. The next brainwave state in parasympathetic is the theta state. That's between 4 and 8 hertz. That's synonymous with that meditative, between conscious and unconscious, hypnotic, very relaxing state that your body's in full recovery and healing, right? Then you have the alpha state, which is also known as the flow state, right? If an athlete is running or dancing or just in their zone, right? The monkey, you're on, but the monkey mind isn't thinking anything but one thing, right? So you're in what they say the flow state. So those are the parasympathetic states. The sympathetic state correlates with the beta brainwave, which is 14 to 30 hertz, and there's low, medium, and high beta. Now, why I believe HRV is the most important metric for health and longevity is because if you look at all disease, all aging, all everything, the root cause of anything in this three-dimensional reality we live in on a cellular level is stress, right? The root cause of aging, disease, and death is stress, because what does stress do? Stress causes inflammation on a cellular level. And being in a prolonged high beta stressful state for long periods of time create this inflammation on a cellular level that end up forming physical ailments, chemical ailments, all the things, right? Why is that the case? Well, when our body goes into a high beta sympathetic state, it triggers our amygdala to fire off, and it's essentially fighting for its survival, which we evolved creating the sympathetic state because we used to live in a jungle, right? There were tigers. We needed to quickly turn on if we were sleeping, if we were napping, and run or fight for our lives. So what is our body doing? It's actually trying to support us by the amygdala firing off to all the visceral organs. Slow down. We don't need you to be doing your things. Let's send all the vital oxygen to the extremities, to our muscles, so we can survive, right? And then after half an hour, you're supposed to turn that off and go back to supporting the visceral organs in digestion and heart rate and breath. Fast forward to today, the same response physiologically happens in your body and the amygdala firing off if you have a mental thought that you're in danger. If you have a perceived trigger or an argument with a spouse that reminds you of something from an earlier version of yourself that causes the body to go into this sympathetic response, the same thing's happening in your body when it actually doesn't need to fight for survival. It's not in a real life or death threat, but it thinks it is, right? So bringing awareness to that is crucial for regulating the nervous system. And that's why it is so important to support nervous system regulation.
And when we are in that beta brainwave state, what does it feel like in our body? Because there's some people who are like living in stress for so long that they don't know what it feels like to not be in that beta brainwave dominant state, sympathetic state. Like, how are people presenting?
Yeah, well, so another way to think of HRV is it's actually a measure of how much are you in your body and out of your mind, right? How much are you listening to what your body's saying? And most people, which most of the world is operating in that high beta state the second they wake up due to work stress, partner stress, friend stress, all the things, right? They don't know how they feel because they're too much in the thought loop of what's happening rather than being aware of what's going on in their body. And we've talked about this, and you actually supported articulating it in a way that blew my mind. Anytime we have a perceived stress or trigger, right, outside of us, if you were to map out the body, what's actually happening beneath what we are perceiving out there, because I know you believe everything out there is a mirror and reflection of what's in here, right? Beneath what we're perceiving to trigger us, there's an emotion always associated with it. And directly connected to that emotion is a physical somatic sensation or shape that's stuck in our body. And all the external trigger or perceived stress is actually trying to do is bring attention to our body and to the stuck sensation. Because an emotion isn't a good or bad thing. An emotion just is, right? Every emotion is meant to be felt. And on a quantum level, it's actually a scalar sound wave. So an emotion is meant to be felt and go through our body for up to 3 minutes, and then we move through it, right? We're supposed to feel angry and sad and happy, and all of it's here, right? All the colors of the rainbow. However, if we feel an emotion and our body and our nervous system at that time we feel it cannot process what is happening, or someone around us thinks like, oh, it's a bad thing, and mainly our formative years, right? Because actually between the ages of 2 and 7, our brains are still forming, and we are in that theta hypnotic state, and we don't even know it. and we are very suggestible to anything around us, right? So for a kid and we fall and our parents are screaming and crying and things to think, that's a traumatic experience for us, right? And so what happens with that emotion that's supposed to go through us in that moment is it doesn't go through us. Our nervous system splits and we go into that fight or flight sympathetic state. And instead of going through us, that sound wave gets stuck in our body and calcifies and freezes like water in the ectoplasm of our fascia and forms a shape. So we have these frozen emotions that are all over in our body, and we are essentially grown-ups living in this adult meat suit, reliving all of our stuck emotions that we haven't processed until we actually bring attention to them, right? Which is why I love the work that you do around somatic release and feeling in the body, because that's all any of these emotions actually want. They want to be felt, because then that frozen emotion, that calcified emotion, slowly, if you bring awareness to it, will start to melt and allow for that scalar sound wave to energetically move through the body. And then it's gone. And then magically the perceived trigger will come up and you laugh at it. You don't even get triggered because it's actually there to teach you. It's a lesson.
And you see it as that. You don't see it as, oh my God, it's a trigger, I'm going to die. You begin to see the gifts of your triggers or the gifts of your experiences rather than being the victim of it. Oftentimes, I believe like those frozen, crystallized sound waves of repressed emotion are holding us back from all of that authentic expression, all of that embodiment, all that purpose, because that's revealed to you through that which you lean into in the form of triggers. Like if you see what's triggering you, you get to grow, you get to grow, you get to grow, you get to grow, therefore experiencing your purpose, therefore experiencing a higher level of health. But my God, if we're holding on to those frozen, crystallized pieces of us or emotions or with sound waves, as you say, it's going to block us. So in that sense, then, isn't the most important thing in our human experience to connect to those parts of us that want to be expressed?
Not the most important, it's the only thing that actually matters. And that's what we're all here to do. And the most cliche saying that your biggest wound is your greatest gift, because it's through the wound, it's through feeling that emotion that actually steps you up into your next level and your higher purpose, right? And something that has just supported me so much in my journey, when I get so much in a thought loop, I ask myself, it's a very engineering geeky question, but one of my favorite questions, what is systematically responsible for the electric signal that causes my heart to beat, that causes your heart to beat, right? That causes everyone's heart to beat. And science has proven it's not the brain, it's not the breath, right? But science hasn't proven what it is, because we don't know what is the thing that is creating that. And my answer, my truth to that is source, God, love, consciousness, Allah, Buddha, whatever you want to believe, the greater thing that is creating this magic, this beautiful tapestry of love we see around us. That's what's responsible for that heart beating, right? And that thing we all come from, right? That's where our souls all come from, I believe. And so that means that the heart is essentially the seed of our soul, right? It's where our soul enters into this reality. The heart is also the center of the nervous system. So that means the nervous system, which is an electrical system, I believe, is the bridge between where we all come from and our manifested reality in three-dimensional that we create with our thought and our senses. And back to your point, I believe our soul journey in this incarnation is to simply clear that electrical bridge to allow our soul to come through us, because all our souls, which come from the same pool, want the same thing. We just have our own unique artistic way of showing how that looks up here. And if we can allow that to come through us, magically it starts lifting everyone around you and yourself, right? And so what is stuck in this electric nervous system? What we just talked about, those frozen, calcified emotions. So bringing attention and awareness, doing the inward work, will reflect in the outer magically.
The way that I think about it is, and you're saying this, the way that I visualize it, because that's the way that I understand things, is like we have this beautiful roadway that spans all of the state or the country we live in. And there's just these boulders that are blocking those roadways from working, right? And that signal, that flow of energy of our soul's expression coming through. So when you say it's like the thing, it's the thing, right? Like it's the thing that is, because we push so hard. And it's so funny. It's like spirituality. We push so hard to like, oh, my soul, and I want to like embody my soul. But like, don't look at the blockages that are blocking you from your own inherent intelligence of having that soul flow. It's just like, we're trying to like heal a wound, but we keep picking it. And then we're like, oh, I don't know, my soul's not flowing, you know? But the truth is like, we can remove the blockages, which would be your fingernail scratching it, and then just let the wound heal automatically. And the body has its own intelligence, right? So like me personally, when I worked on sessions, I would help remove or move that energy that was stuck, expressed, and then it's a different vibration. And we won't even get to woo-woo. But like you can feel someone, your felt experience of a person is different when they begin to remove those boulders that are blocking that roadway. Why? Because more of who they are is truly on the surface, and who we are is soul, right? Not the ego that we, like, oh, I'm this and I'm a doctor and I have a podcast, there's more. And when we remove those blocks, it comes to the surface and people feel you differently. I actually would say a big marker for where you are in your health journey is how do people feel you?
100%.
Are people feeling you truly in their hearts? And they're like, holy moly, who is that person? I want to be around them. I feel them. Because there's a lot of frauds out there. Would you agree that like the felt sensation of someone from the heart is a marker for how healthy you are? I'm always talking about the importance of clean eating and high quality ingredients. And that doesn't just stop at food. It extends to supplements we take too, especially omega-3s. And that is why I'm excited to share a game changer I've discovered. It's Puori's O3 Ultra Pure Fish Oil. I'm gonna tell you the thing about fish oils. They all come from the ocean, and we know that our oceans are not as pristine as they were. And this is why I love Puori. It only uses small fish for their oil. It's a simple way to minimize the exposure to contaminants. But Puori takes a step further. Every single batch of their O3 is certified clean by the Clean Label Project and tested for over 200 contaminants. We're talking about heavy metals, pesticides, the works. And as someone like me who's really active, I notice a real difference since starting taking Puori's O3, especially in inflammation. I got a potent dose of EPA and DHA, which is crucial for the heart, the brain, and the eyes, but most importantly is the muscle recovery, which is a big deal for me. Especially with many of you out there, and I talk about muscle and hormones and just longevity and skeletal health, hitting the gym regularly. You gotta make sure as you're getting older, you're supporting and reducing that inflammation. So with Puori, I'm getting a premium, pure, and potent source of omega-3s. It's a peace of mind, really. Head over to puori.com/DRG and use the promo code DRG at checkout to get 20% off of the O3 Ultra Pure Fish Oil and all of their great products. That is puori.com/DRG and use the code DRG at checkout. Today, I want to chat about something that's been a game changer for me when it comes to skin health. It is active skin repair. It is, if you have kids, you need this in your pantry, 100%. But everyone should have this because, we get into accidents, we cut ourselves, we step on stuff. And I've seen a lot of skin products come out for home, but this one is different. This is not only going to help your wound heal, but it's also going to clean it out. And I'm such a fan of this stuff. Like this, I don't know any companies that are doing it like this, right? When it comes to wound healing. And really, like I've given it to my friends who have kids. My partner stepped on a stingray the other day and she had a cut on the bottom of her foot. Immediately, as soon as we got home, I pulled out my active skin repair, soaked her foot. That thing healed in 2 days. There was no more pain, no more itching, no more anything. Why? Because active skin repair works on your body's own natural healing process. It actually has a secret molecule called hypochlorous acid. This is something that your white blood cells create when there's a wound. And it's super versatile, whether you're dealing with a nasty cut or sunburn or chronic issues like eczema, rosacea, this stuff has got you covered. It's fantastic. It's non-toxic for the skin. It's good for all skin types. And it's great when you're on the go. It's a simple solution for skin issues, wound healing, decluttering your medicine cabinet. Just get rid of all of that. There's been millions of people that have given active skin repair a try. They have thousands of 5-star reviews. It's great. Go to activeskinrepair.com, and I mean it, and learn more about it and to give it a try. Use the code DRG at checkout. You're going to get 20% off of your order. That is activeskinrepair.com and use the code DRG for 20%.
Man, my body lit up hearing you say that last sentence, which means it's absolutely true. I call it the truth bumps because our heart's the largest magnet, right? It's incredible and it's always putting out a frequency, and that frequency is directly associated to where you are at in your level of consciousness and your emotions. And you could walk on a subway and tell, oh, that person's angry, that person's happy, that person, you could tell. You don't even need to talk to them. You can feel it, right? So you can feel how much people are working on their inward journey, where they're at, just by being present to their body language and what they are communicating with you without verbal cues, right?
Yeah. And the funny thing is like, you don't have to be a somatic healer. We have all that. We have that sixth sense, right? It's in many ways a survival thing. Is this person safe or unsafe? And like, the more safe a person feels, the more that we can really be like, whoa, this person either was blessed to have a wonderful family and a life with no trauma, and they're just don't have many blocks, or they've actually done some work on themselves, and both are okay. But I just love that this conversation is being had, because I challenge any of you out there to find a podcast that is having this type of conversation, that is talking about the nervous system, that is talking about somatics, that is talking about repressed energy, that is talking about heart fields, that is talking about soul. Because what we're talking about here, and I say this with the least amount of ego, is the highest form of health. If every doctor had this conversation, if every practitioner in medicine had this conversation, any healer, oh my God, the healing would be crazy in this world. Like, we'd see the destruction of gut issues, the destruction of cancer, the destruction of many chronic diseases, aside from the food system. We'd see massive, massive changes. So, okay. So,
and just to touch on that, that is because all of those ailments and diseases you mentioned are afterthoughts of an underlying issue. Because when something happens in the physical body, that's because you weren't listening to your body enough, and it's your body gifting you with an opportunity to listen to whatever the thing is that it's been trying to scream at you. And the bigger the quote unquote challenge or perceived ailment or whatever happened, that just shows that you weren't actually listening, right? And I have so many examples in my life of that happening. And so it's not about not going through a traumatic experience or having the easiest life. That's actually not how you improve your HRV or increase your nervous system and its ability to handle stress. How you improve your HRV is you put yourself in perceived stressful situations, right? You turn on your agency, you turn on your awareness, you realize that, oh my God, wow, this isn't an actual life or death situation. You get your body from that high beta sympathetic state into a calm, relaxed parasympathetic state. And by doing so, you're telling your heart, you're working out your heart, which is a muscle, that, oh, increasing the malleability and resilience in it to handle that the next time it happens, right? Mm-hmm. So I like to say, and I talk about this with my clients, it's really training to be an emotional athlete. We work so hard and train so hard on our physical bodies, but what is more important, that's super important, and that supports the training of your nervous system, but training and regulating your nervous system and training to be an emotional athlete is actually the most important work, and will only lead to improvements in your physical body and in your overall health span, lifespan, longevity, all of that.
Yeah. It's sort of that we became shackled to this human experience in the sense of material. Mm-hmm. So therefore, the material matters most to us. Therefore, the physical interventions is the only things that people want to listen to right now, right? And it's sort of, I'll see on my Instagram, I'll talk about like, eat this food, don't eat this. People are like, yeah, 1 million likes, And then I'll be like, hey, your nervous system needs flexibility, and it is the root of all inflammation and trauma and health. You know what I mean? And we sort of have to believe in the things that aren't physically tangible, and we have to believe that those things that are not seen, but we feel them, but not seen, are the real things that are leading to our health. Because, dude, you don't know how many times like people are like, I've seen every doctor. I'm suffering with every chronic disease. I have this pain for years. It's not going away. Like, why, when me or my students work on people, there's miracles, mm-hmm. is because we're working on the nervous system. We're working exactly on those boulders to let the soul come through. And ironically, when the nervous system is balanced, what happens? Reduction in inflammation. The body starts healing, right?
Yes.
We're not trying to heal, pinpoint, like, okay, let's give the medicine for the gut. Let's give the medicine for the thyroid. The body's doing what it knows to do. So what happens then? Okay, so let's say there's
I want to touch on because I was super guilty, and I could maybe share a little bit of my story and how I got here on doing what you just said, focused on the physical, on the material, and all the things, right? My journey, I went to school for engineering. I worked at a nuclear power plant for 5.5 years, very like analytical mind. And it was at that time that I started my health journey, right? And that stemmed from, my father passing at a young age due to cancer, and then my grandmother getting breast cancer. And I was like, whoa, what's going on in the world? Everybody I know and love is affected by this disease. And I started doing my own research and came across this incredible doctor who was, supporting so many people through their cancer with baking soda, sodium bicarbonate, which is a natural alkalizer, because he believed that cancer cannot thrive in an oxygen-rich alkaline environment. And most of us, especially in the West, are very acidic, primarily from the food and the processed stuff that we eat, right? And to me, it wasn't about what he was actually doing, but just the fact that I am realizing for the first time in my life, I see what people want me to see, and there's so much more out there. And so I think one of the best gifts anybody could do is curiosity, right? Like, go and see for yourself and feel for yourself the things that work. And so I ended up quitting the power plant job and launching a beverage company, which you know so much about, and you've talked about sound. It's unsweetened, sparkling tea, essentially, and really sound as an adjective, sound body, sound mind, sound ingredients, sound mission, with a mission to bring transparency and education into the beverage space, because it's drastically needed. I mean, you were the one that inspired us actually to look into PFAS in our drinks and run the report, just because it's so wild. Like, consumers don't know what they're consuming. Crazy, right? Like, it's the whole point of a consumer to know what they're putting in. And when I started the beverage company 10 years ago, it also correlated with the launch and the surgence of the biohacking movement, right? Which my engineering analytical mind geeked out on, because I'm thinking, oh my God, I need to optimize and be at like my best and do and all the things. And I'm so in my mind. So the first 5 years of the biohacking movement and launching the beverage, I went all in. I was doing all the crazy things. I mean, you've seen my house. I have every gadget you can imagine. I was showing off. I was sleeping 5 hours a day, running 10 miles every other day, listening to audiobooks, raising money from 170 people, living in New York City, like go, thinking I'm winning, right? Not listening at all to my body, just doing the material things. And then after 5 years, my body so beautifully gifted me and spoke up and broke down, and my knee gave out, and it forced me to sit for the first time, because I was so addicted to sweating and the endorphin release that I needed to find another way to do that. And I came across Bikram, which was the first time my mind was forced to shut up, right? And that was the beginning of my inward journey. And it was at that time, I had an Oura ring at the time, and I was really more concerned about my readiness score and my sleep score, but they had this marker of HRV that nobody was talking about 5 years ago. Nobody knew anything about, but it was always there. And I read Dr. Joe Dispenza's Becoming Supernatural at the time, which I love that book for an engineering analytical mind. It physiologically explains what's happening. And he, in the beginning of the book, mentions HRV, but mentioned it in a way that it relates to stress, which I had never heard. Because of what we talked about earlier, I knew from a company I'm associated with, Newcom, that the root cause of all aging, disease, and death is stress. Period. End of story, from the reason I gave. And I was like, wow. I started doing more research on HRV and realized this metric is measuring your relationship to stress. If that's the most important thing, regulating your nervous system for health and longevity, why is nobody talking about it? Yeah. And I just focused the last 5 years on optimizing and improving that metric, right? And when I started, my average HRV was like at 32. And the first year I push and do all the things trying to improve it, and nothing was really moving that needle until I started the inward journey, until I started the somatic work, until I started relaxing, until I actually started listening and feeling my body and using all these technologies with the intention to regulate and get to homeostasis, that I started seeing drastic improvements in my HRV. And I was doing so while still running the beverage company, which is an extremely stressful industry to be in. So throughout the day, I'd be on investor calls, doing things, and then go and dip into parasympathetic states via technologies, via breath work, via meditation, via cold plunging, via somatic work, which was essentially exercising my nervous system to go from that beta sympathetic state into a relaxed parasympathetic state throughout the day. That's the thing most people are guilty of. They talk about, I always get asked, what's the best way to improve your HRV? First thing I say is sleep, right? But then I say, actually fluctuating that nervous system during the day, that NSDR, non-sleep deep rest, that pause throughout the day, because again, we evolved creating this sympathetic state to only be in it for a half hour, hour most, and then drop back in, right? If you go to the animal kingdom, you look at all the wild animals, they're in a parasympathetic state 95% of the time, right? Unlike us, who wake up from our deepest parasympathetic state of delta, we look at our phones, we start the typical cycle of a day, and we stay in this high stressful state without realizing it until we either have our glass of wine after dinner or go to sleep. That's 8, 10, 12 hours of your amygdala firing off consistently. Oh my God, fight or flight, all the vital oxygen going away from the visceral organs to the extremities. And instead of working on the inflammation in your body, it's trying to let you survive, right? So to truly fluctuate that system during the day is how I was able to take mine from 32 to a baseline of 160, 180, peaking at 240. And it was just so mind-blowing to me that nobody was talking about it. And I have felt and seen the rewards. And so that's now part of my new chapter and what I'm trying to do, which you've been doing in other ways, and why I think HRV is a beautiful technology because of what you shared around, people, you post on, what to eat or what to buy and everybody loves it. But the second you talk about somatics or nervous system, it's like, HRV is a measurable thing that people can see that actually tells you the health of your nervous system and how regulated it is. And you could do the somatic work and do it consistently and then see your nervous system actually improve. For the people who, like me, I was guilty of, I couldn't feel when I started, right? I was way too in the head, way too in the mind, way too focused on material things to actually listen to the body.
Now, I came across some pretty eye-opening research lately. Turns out that 3 out of 4 homes in America have harmful contaminants in their tap water. That's crazy. 3 out of 4, come on. I don't do math good, but that's 75%, ain't it? There's a lot of stuff that we're drinking that could be problematic to our body. Our bodies are about 60% water, and staying hydrated is super crucial for our health. But the quality of the water matters just as much as the quantity. And I'm about finding simple, effective solutions to health problems. I love AquaTrue. It is a water purifier that uses a 4-stage reverse osmosis process. It removes 15 times more contaminants than that average pitcher filter like the Brita. And what really caught my attention was how it deals with PFAS. It gets rid of those forever chemicals, the stuff that we're hearing so much about that is so nasty to our body. It's a big deal, and it's found in 45% of US tap water. These PFAS are being eliminated, and we know that they're such an issue for our health long-term because they stay in our body for a really long time. But it's super easy. It's countertop, no plumbing, no insulation. You just plug it in, you're good to go. And let me tell you, the difference is taste is incredible. The filters last way longer than you'd expect. We're talking about 6 months to 2 years, depending on the type of model. And get this, one set of filters from their classic purifier makes an equivalent of 4,500 bottles of water. That is less than 3 cents a bottle. Head over to aquatrue.com and you'll get 20% off of any AquaTrue purifier. That is AQUATRU.com, and use the code DRG at checkout. Yeah, I hear that, man. And for the viewers and listeners, you have probably the highest HRV I've ever seen. So, it's not just him theoretically talking about it. It's right there. It's right there in front of us, you can't fake that, For the people viewing and listening, and they go, okay, HRV sounds great and all. How do I know what my HRV is? And then also when they measure the HRV, what's a good number? What's not a good number? How do we know what to go by?
Beautiful. Two very common questions. First, how do you measure it? There are so many different technologies out there, a lot of wearables. I have the Oura Ring just because it's minimal and simplistic, but there's Apple Watch, there's Whoop. Athletes actually get straps and measure their real time, right? There are apps out there, and I'm actually partnering with one that you could just measure it with your phone. It's called Source, an incredible app. And then you put your phone over a flash in the camera and breathe and synchronize your breath for 1 minute, and it picks up that pulse and measures the gap between. And so all these work, and it's not about how accurate the number is, because this leads to your second question of what's a good score. That's my favorite thing about HRV is there is no range in scores because there is no good score. There's no bad score. It gets right into the material world when you compare your HRV to someone else's. Like people hear my score, they're like, oh my God, I'm not healthy. Am I going to die? Not at all. Think about what HRV is. If it's measuring that variance between each gap, your heart is beating on average 40 to 60 times a minute. That gap is changing drastically at all times, especially during our waking conscious life, right? What most of the wearables measure is your average nightly HRV, which I believe is a beautiful baseline because you have no external stimulus going on. And what that is reflecting is the health of your nervous system based on what you did the day before. So it's not important to know if it's a good or bad score. It's important to know your baseline score. And then when you wake up, compare what you wake up to your baseline, because another way I say and articulate HRV is it's a language in which your heart and body is communicating with you, right? And so you said it's so important to listen to what the body's saying. HRV is a secret way for us to actually listen to what it's saying. And when you think about languages, you don't think Spanish is better than English, is better than Arabic or French. The intent of a language is for an ecosystem to communicate within its community, right? The intent of HRV is for your body, your heart to communicate solely with you. So the second you compare it to someone else's, well, guess what? You're lowering your HRV score because it's a reflection of how you are perceiving the world. And if you're perceiving the world like, oh my God, that person's better than me, I'm not healthy, what's going to happen? You're going to have a lower HRV score, right? So when I say baseline, I define baseline as your average HRV score over the last 30 days, right? So if you wake up, if you know your baseline's 32 and you wake up and you see a score of 25, that is telling you that whatever you did the day before, it put more of a load on your nervous system than it's used to over the last 30 days. That's not a bad thing. That just means, hey, my body is a little run down. Let's honor it. Let's pause. Let's do something that fills me up. Let's do breath work. Let's do somatic work. Let's go dance. Let's go hang with friends. Let's do something that isn't overexerting your body, right? More than it's used to. If you wake up and you have a score higher than your baseline, that's your body giving you permission to go push it a little bit, which you should, because again, you improve it by going through that edge and going back, right?
Makes sense. So then if HRV is the most important marker for our overall and long-term health, what are the top things that are affecting our heart rate variability?
Yeah. And because of the first definition I gave, which it's a measure of how your heart is perceiving its changing environment, it's not just what you eat. It's not just how you work out. It's what you watch, what you listen to, who you're with, your geographic location. Every single thing that you do impacts your HRV, right? And that's why there's not one thing that works for one person. And that's why you can't compare your score to everyone else's. The beauty of it being a language is it's a feedback loop for you to continue working on your inward journey and clearing and listening to all those stuck emotions that are in your body.
Okay. Does alcohol affect heart rate variability?
Oh my. Yes, absolutely. And actually one of the things that impacts it more than anything, especially because most people drink in the evening and at night. So it's going to drastically impact your sleep, which is one of the biggest things that will impact your HRV, because sleep is when you're in that deep delta parasympathetic state and one of the most crucial for your nervous system and its regulation, right? And so for me, I lived in New York City, was a big drinker at the time. And as I realized what HRV was and started tracking it and listening to it, within 3 months, I stopped drinking because I was like, holy crap, my nervous system is not happy even when I have a glass of this. And it's like, if I am here to truly support what my body wants, I need to listen to what it's saying. Now, that doesn't mean that you don't ever not need to drink, right? If you're drinking and you do so and enjoy it on the occasion and your body's okay with it, that's fine. And don't be upset of doing it. And I'm not saying for people to drink or not to drink. Zero judgment. I don't believe in actually good or bad, right and wrong, blue and red. I look at everything in terms of frequency and dissonance and resonance, right? Is this dissonant to me? Is it resonant for me? And why I love HRV is it's a tool that allows you to see if something is resonant with you or see if something is dissonant, and not just something, someone. Like, you best believe who you hang out with impacts your HRV and your nervous system, right? And usually we have our gut instincts, but sometimes because of external material things or beliefs, we end up still staying with whoever the group, whoever the person is, not realizing the impact it's having. And HRV is a secret tool that you could use to actually feel and hear your body.
Yeah. I mean, imagine being in a relationship with someone who's the sole cause pretty much of your heart rate variability dysfunction, or just the reduction over and over. I can imagine that probably the people you surround yourself with is really high on the list of big heart rate variability disruptors. My God, like living in a house where you're stressed when the person walks in and relieved when they walk out has to be the most poisonous thing you can put in your body.
Well, totally. Think about it, because without you even realizing it, our body, it's so brilliant, right? If that person triggers and stresses you, you go into your limbic brain, which is, again, autonomic survival response. Think of it as essentially like a hospital. What happens if a hurricane or tornado comes? All doors, all blinds, everything shuts for protection, right? It's a safety mechanism that goes on because it's supposed to. However, let's say a shooter comes into the hospital and that safety mechanism goes on. Is that a good thing? Absolutely not. If you're living in a home and someone triggers you, a spouse triggers you every time, your body is going into that response. The amygdala is firing off and having it do all those physiological things without you controlling it. And that is slowly over time causing inflammation on a cellular level, right? And the one thing I just want to reflect back, It's not that that person is actually bad for you, because again, I don't believe in good and bad. That person's actually the biggest medicine for you, because what they are doing by causing you to go into that triggered state is they're giving you an opportunity to feel what wants to be felt and get out of a stuck pattern of this trigger, right? That doesn't mean you stay with the person. That means if you take responsibility, sovereignty, and ownership of putting yourself in that situation, and actually, instead of reacting externally and being triggered by them, go and sit and feel into your body. Do somatic work. Do something that supports listening to what your body's telling you. They've just given you the biggest gift of actually realizing what is going on, because they're not the ones that are causing that response. You actually created them, manifested them so that you can feel it, right? The best example I give, people think, and this goes back to mapping out the body. So many people have stage fright, very guilty of it. People get on stage, they're nervous to talk, they get the knots in their stomach, right? Mm-hmm. And we believe, our minds believe that we have these knots in our stomach because we're on the stage. The reality is that we created this stage so that we can feel whatever is happening in our body and move through it. Mm-hmm. But we are so focused on thinking that, oh, it's something outside of me that's causing it. Everything is us. It's always us.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm. Yeah, I mean, and that's the shift from the moving through life in the victimization mode, or having sovereignty or being empowered over that which you experience, right? Like maybe you get those butterflies to experience and express some of those, like you said, calcified waves that are stuck in your fascia that want to be expressed. Maybe the fear that you need to experience to do that which you're supposed to do in your soul's purpose. You need to get over that fear, you know? And what a great opportunity for people to view and listen and go, okay, well, here I am. I'm triggered by my husband. I'm triggered by my wife. I'm definitely triggered by my boss, right? And maybe that's a situation that you can't leave right now, or maybe you don't leave. Maybe you heal it. But more importantly, you're saying, look at you, feel somatically what you're feeling, lean into you not being the victim, but an empowered person. And with that empowered information, then you can experience what you're supposed to experience.
1,000%. And a beautiful way to put a bow on that is, I believe this is an educational simulation we live in, and everything is always happening for you to continue feeling and opening up that channel of the nervous system, right? And the best example I could give is my journey, right? And you know, almost exactly a year ago to today, I had a massive shoulder surgery, right? And that happened from on my birthday last year. The community gifted me a beautiful, including you, Super 73 e-bike, right? I know you have one too. You got it as a gift one birthday as well.
Exactly.
On that birthday, I actually asked in front of you all, I wanted to step into a new chapter of my life of less doing, more being, right? I asked that. And then I get gifted this bike. I take said bike for its first spin on the Venice Boardwalk here. And I have the most silly accident that I fall, I anteriorly dislocate my right shoulder, tear my labrum, and fracture 30% of my glenoid, my shoulder socket off, right? Have to go to the ER. They have to dislocate to relocate it. I'm in excruciating pain. I wake up the next morning. My HRV the day before was 162. That morning, it was down at 31, right? Which for me is screaming, oh my God, I did something. Obviously, I did something, right? I just dislocated, tore my shoulder. Furious. I'm like, how did this happen? First spin, all the things, reliving it. And I get on a call with my coach at the time, tell him the story, and he laughs. And he goes, let's break down the body spiritually. The arms represent the doing. The body, the torso represents the being. The shoulder connects the doing to the being. Mm-hmm. I asked to step into less doing, more being. Mm-hmm. My body gifted me exactly what I asked for from the gift in front of everybody I asked for it. The irony, the comedy of it all, I started laughing and realized, oh my God, this entire situation is a gift to have me step into this next chapter that I asked for, that I could actually go travel for 3 months like I did. I woke up the next morning, 24 hours after the dislocation, same pain, same everything. My HRV was 97, tripled simply from my relationship to the accident and it happening for me, which shows it's not just the physical and what you eat, but it's truly how you are perceiving the world. And what I talk about with my clients is the most important conversation any of us ever have is the one that's going on in here, the one that we're having with ourselves and how we are perceiving ourselves and the world around us, right?
It's incredible because nothing really changed. Your shoulder was still dislocated.
Yep.
So the way that we perceive ourselves as victim or empowered can completely shift everything. It showed in your nervous system.
And it was so cool to see that score, because that, to me, you talk about people, want to know about food and this because they can't feel it. To me, that was like a number that was like, oh my God, I'm in the same amount of pain. This thing just happened. But because I decided to perceive this differently, because I decided to actually enjoy and get the medicine in what the world and my body was trying to show me, it shifted everything, right?
So I think there's an important caveat. The empowered state comes from the belief that the world that you live in is benevolent and working for you. Because there can be people who are empowered and they're like, fuck the government, I'm empowered. I know what you're really putting in our food. But that's also, in a sense, still a state of victimization, because I am victimized to a malevolent government.
And who put that government in place?
Yeah, exactly. Right? Yeah. So deeper is the autonomy that we feel is such that the universe is benevolent, looking out for us. And even if I break my shoulder, even if my beautiful dog that I love for 10 years gets run over, there's something here.
Mm-hmm. And that doesn't mean you can't be sad or angry or cry and have all the emotions when things happen. That's not to like downplay the significance of like a dog passing away or breaking up with someone, right? And you should, and it's important to feel all that and let that through, right? There's a time and place for it. But to stay in it over time is what will lead to the aging and the inflammation in our bodies, because it was, if you take a macro view, always happening for you, right?
I'm asking you a hard question then, Salim. What happens, how do you say a child who's been abused and moved to foster homes and abused at foster homes and then grows up and goes to jail and then comes out and then abused again? Naturally, the people are going to be like, how does that happen for me? How has that happened for that person? Aren't they a victim? What would you say?
Yeah, and that's a real tough one. And I have several people that are extremely close in my life who have gone through that, right? And gone through some of the most horror stories. I call her my spiritual fairy godmother, Abby, and her life upbringing is the most cringeworthy story I've ever heard. And she has the most light I've ever seen out of anybody, because she has done the work to move through all that and use everything now as a gift for everybody else and be of service to show how you can get to the other side, right? And that doesn't mean it's easy, and that doesn't mean it's wrong, and it doesn't mean they weren't actually a victim, right? It's just, what are you doing with it?
So what I'm hearing is the more darkness that you go through is the more potentiality for overcoming and bringing more light.
The more dark, the more light. Because what is darkness? What is shadow? It's actually just absent of light. And the bigger the challenge, I know you've been through so many challenges, I know I've been through so many challenges, the more opportunity for higher light. Because how can you ascend and have more light if you haven't actually embodied and experienced all the emotions, right? We are here to experience everything. And the more we experience, the more we embody, the more we can grow, the more we could feel, the more we can love.
So here's the way that I always explain it to patients when they come in. I say, you have these things that are in your body and your fascia that have been there for such a long time, and your nervous system's doing a great job of holding it because your ego's saying, I can't be, do, say, or have this because it's unsafe. And I often, with my arms, like show them, I'll show my hands and I'll be like, okay, well, here's this little range that you live life in. And this is what you call you. If her name's Jennifer, I'll be like, Jennifer, this is you, that you don't get too light, too happy, too joyous, too love, but you definitely don't get too sad, too angry, too guilty, too in shame, too scared, right? And it's so uncomfortable to operate in this range, because when Jennifer was a child, she was all the way at the end of the spectrum of all of those dark emotions or that pain and that light, right? All that expression of light. And ironically, children are so good at it because they can go literally in 5 minutes from one to the other. I've seen kids do that. I was like, damn, man, this is what's like having kids. And shout out to parents. But like, and when you remove those blocks, automatically there's a broadening of that spectrum where there's more light available because you lean into more of that darkness. And some of us have reservoirs that are 1,000 feet deep of darkness because we've gone through so much and have been holding it in. Some of us have some bumps that we've gone through. Regardless, there's always a rebound effect and an expression and expansion. You got to contract and go through all that pain to expand. And when we remove or move emotions or stuck energy, that expansion usually is a new sense of self. It's going to be a permanent change if we allow it, unless we can always go back to old us.
Mm-hmm.
But that new expression is really, really powerful. And then I believe that's when you start feeling, that's when your husband goes, or the wife, feel different. No, what have you been doing? Have you been meditating? You just feel so good. Oh, I don't know. I just went to get a somatic, Or like your coworkers are like, wow, Robert feels so good. Jennifer feels so good. It's because the heart is expansive, the field of the heart. Like you said, the soul is more in the nervous system, to not even to get too woo-woo, but like you're just more you.
100%.
And is that not, would you say then, in your perspective of all the books you read, all the people you've talked to, is not then the embodiment of authenticity, the embodiment of who you are, why we're here?
The only reason I believe we're here, and that ties back to my whole analogy of the heart being the seat of the soul and the nervous system being the bridge. And all our job is to clear the soul, to allow our authentic self through us. Like, period, end of story. And I reflect this to you all the time. Why I love and admire you is because you do that so well, regardless of what people think, regardless of it freestyling in a sauna. That means that, like, regardless of how weird it looks, which, by the way, weird is one of my favorite words. The Latin origin of the word weird means fate or destiny, right? So the weirder the better, I say. I've been called weird my whole life. And by allowing our authentic selves to come through, we allow others to embody and feel that and then step into their authentic selves, right? And again, I believe all our souls come from the same place, right? Whatever you want to call consciousness, awareness, source, God, it's all the same. And we are just having our own unique experience of it. So we all want the same thing. And people are like, well, isn't it selfish to only think about you and to think it's all you? And I like to say it's actually self-full, not selfish, it's self-full, because by doing the work and regulating your nervous system, no matter what, you're going to want to immediately share that with the world and be of service in the world. And your authenticity, as you are a prime example of with the show and all the work you do, will put you in a role that you are sharing that with everybody else and supporting everyone else.
And to all, like, the people out there, if you have kids, like, this is the most important work, aside from providing shelter and food and schooling for your kids. Like, if you're in this contracted nervous system state, that was very much so the same thing that your dad or mom was in. That was very much so their parents, and you're carrying this generational contraction. Then it would behoove us as parents, it's sort of our responsibility, especially if you know this information now. Now it's your responsibility to work on your nervous system, truly, to prioritize HRV, to see how our environment, right? Not only just food, but truly our environment, and most of all, our relationship as victim or empowered, how that's affecting us. And if we expand, at least the way I love to see it that time, like if we expand our system and embody more of us, remember, we said it, you said it too, felt experience, same thing. It's a felt experience. What do you think your kids feel? You don't even need to say the words. They feel mom different. They feel dad different. That's the healing that the kids need.
100%. Well, it all goes back to the heart. Our heart is the largest magnet. It's a metronome, right? And metronomes will always synchronize to the most powerful metronome, right? So if you, like, an example I love to give on this, if you have like 4 females, a mom and 3 daughters in a house, what ends up happening is their cycle syncs all to the same cycle, but it's not to the moms. It's to who has the biggest heart, right? They've done a study on it. And in fact, in this study, it was the smallest girl, because she had the most joy. All the cycles synced to her because she had the biggest metronome.
That's the most powerful thing I've heard in a long time. That's incredible, because, and this is actually the work I've been looking at, is the energetic field from the heart. And we think about cycle syncing, and we don't even think about why that happens. but it's truly, if you think about, I've seen like the Metrodome on Instagram. They have 4 of them, and they finally start dancing together.
Oh yeah, there's one with 52 of them, and you
That's so
see them
cool.
all like it's all crazy and sporadic, and then they finally over like 3 minutes all sync up. Just like if you have 2 grandfather clocks at opposite side of the rooms and you set them a minute apart, they will sync to the one that has the biggest magnet in it, and that's all our hearts are, a bunch of magnets.
So then it's our responsibility to embody who we are, and by embodying who we are physiologically, that means having a more powerful magnet from our heart.
Yep.
So that not only our family, but the people we interact with,
yep,
sync up with us. Then that's medicine.
That's medicine for everyone. And so it ends up being about just being. And so I want to share the rest of my story because, you know, got my accident, ended up having surgery, and then I went on a sabbatical last year for 3 months. And throughout the 3 months of travel, I contemplated every morning what I wanted to step into, which was less doing, more being, right? And as I contemplated that statement, I had an epiphany one day that statement, less doing, more being, is dualistic and mind-made in nature, and implies that doing and being are mutually exclusive. When the reality is we're always being, even though we're unaware of it 99.99% of the time, right? And we're always doing, even if we're sitting or we're sleeping, right? So it's not about doing less and being more. Then what's it about? It's about the intention behind the doing. It's not what you do, it's why you do it. One of my favorite quotes is from the Bhagavad Gita, and it states, "You have a right to your actions, but never the fruits of your actions. Act for the action's sake and don't be attached to inaction." Meaning we didn't come here to not do anything, right? We all came here to do something. We do solely for the sake of the intention and the frequency and the action behind the doing, and we cannot be attached to the fruit or the outcome of what we're doing. We need to just do it for the sake of doing it, for the sake of being. And by doing so, you become this magnet, this light, this metronome for others to step up into their being.
What a beautiful way to really stamp that for people is that we have the ability to heal others. We have the ability to heal our family systems, you know.
By healing ourselves.
By healing ourselves.
That's all the work is.
Yeah. And it's funny because there's like people who are like, well, my dad and my mom, they won't listen to this. And like, I gave them this book and it's what healed me. And like, they won't want to read it and they don't want to heal. It's not your responsibility. The only responsibility you have is to embody, expand that heart magnet, that metronome, really make it powerful, and have your parents have a felt experience when they experience you. And that's the change, because that felt experience, they're going to feel it. They can't not feel it, right? Because we're human beings and we're connected and we can feel magnetism. It's up to them how they react or not react. And I've seen it happen. I've seen people like heal those, move those repressed emotions, move it. And their heart expands, their magnet expands, and they make decisions for themselves that they need to make. And also they start healing family systems.
My God, instantly.
Yeah, like it's crazy that the lady said, like, me and my husband, I don't know what happened, but I didn't say anything, but he just feels me different. I go, of course they feel you different. Your heart's expanded. And that's the most important thing, for a heart to be in that, man, every morning I meditate and I try to put a field around my heart as big as his house.
Mm-hmm.
And I want people to feel joy and inspiration. That's it. And oh my God, the world would be crazy if everyone was intentional about having people feel joy and inspiration when they come across them.
Yep. And that's why I'm obsessed with just bringing awareness and education around HRV, because if people become aware of it and trust and understand that it is the most important metric for longevity and health, then now they have a responsibility to improve it. And if they want to improve it, what do they want to do?
Mm-hmm.
They want to heal themselves. They want to increase their consciousness. They want to be more in their body. And by doing so, everybody benefits from it.
Beautiful. You know, we didn't even talk about like quantum stuff, but that's a whole nother podcast, and you live up the street. So, Salim, thank you. Where can people find out more of your information?
Yes. So, right now, my social media handle, That HRV Guy, THAT HRV Guy. Shout out to Ali for creating such a beautiful name. Website, www.thathrvguy.com. Reach out if you guys have any questions, but that would be the best ways to find me and just find out more information and hopefully just share it, because I'm trying to follow in your footsteps.
man, you're blazing your own path. And really, for those of you who HRV is very important, and you can measure it. And there's cheaper ways, there's more expensive, refined, more accurate. It just get a feel for what's going on. Check your numbers. When people do my course, it's part of the course. You got to measure it.
Yep.
We have to see how it improves over time. And you put up so much information on improving it. It's a wealth. So like everyone go visit the Instagram. Do you have the website?
Yep.
Visit the website and learn how to optimize HRV and just use that as a marker. Go, holy crap, I can't believe how low it is after X, Y, or Z.
Totally.
You're going to see how your nervous system is responding.
Use it as a language to listen to how your body is communicating with you, right? Which is what you try getting people to do all the time. And for me, and someone who's very, analytical and not nearly at the time was not nearly in touch with myself and my authenticity as you are, it was just such a beautiful stepping stone to become more embodied and to feel my body more, right? It's a technology to allow that.
That's the technology. And Salim, for the light you're spreading, for the information that is so important. If you taught your work to every medical school, we'd see healing of diseases much more, because the medical schools would understand that, holy shit, what we're learning is secondary to this stuff. And I mean that, like I really mean it. So God bless, man. You're really teaching us, guiding us, a guiding light. Go listen to all this work, everyone, viewers and listeners. And I thank you, Salim, for coming on.
I thank you too, G. And we got to shout out my mom, who is probably your biggest fan and has for a long time. And so thank you for creating a platform that isn't just people our age, but like just impacting so many demographics on so many ways because of the way you articulate it. So we appreciate it. And she's got the first Doc G merch.
Shout out, Mama. She got the first piece Doc G Heal Thyself merch. I know she's listening. She's standing up right now. I could see it in my mind's eye. And now she's clapping. And she's about to call you when this podcast is over. Thank you so much.
I love you, man.
All right. Love you too.